you get busy and you end up after a while, especially if you're not really aware of it and not thinking about it, you start to just get busy being busy. And before you realize it, you have become what I call a human doing. And that's what you have to do here. You have to make a decision right now. Are you going to change something? Right? And if you're going to change something, then you need to do it right now. You can say, you've got every right to say, you know what? I'll update later. Yeah, I'll update later. Nothing's going to change. You need to say right now, this moment in time, that I do not want to be like this anymore. I want to be like that. And if I want to be like that, I got to change that now. In order to change it now, this is what I'm going to do. Okay? And if you don't know straight away, the decision to find out what that process is going to look like, you make a decision right now that you're going to start going on that.
Welcome to another Martial Mind Power podcast. I'm Jatinder with Sifu Lak, and we're going to be dropping some more wisdom bombs today. Sifu Lak, as always, how are you doing?
Yeah, very good. Thank you. Very good. Thanks for asking. How are you doing today?
Yes, I'm good. Thanks. I'm in recovery mode, but all good.
Recharging your batteries.
Recharging my batteries. That's it. So yeah, let's jump right in. So we're going to be randomly picking a chapter from this amazing book, The Art of Thinking Without Thinking. And as always, we shall click it a few times and stop here. It's done. It's done now. Do you know what happens after a while? You know, the books end up with like...
All right, so turn the book upside down.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
that's another way to look at it. And stop. There we go. Okay, let's see. Not human doing, human being.
What page?
That is page 634.
For the viewers, I'll show you a picture of the artwork for this koan, okay? And for the listeners and the audio podcast, basically there's an image of a woman in a white dress. She's in nature. And she's just walking within nature, and there's a massive big blue sky with some pretty clouds in the background, and she's just there, just being present in the moment. So not human doing, human being. So as in traditional fashion, here is where we practice the philosophy that's mandated as the book title is not to think and allow the messages about what this koan wants you to experience and therefore understand through experience. What comes to you on this one, JT?
So yeah, so this is an interesting one, because sometimes when you not think about things just pop into your mind from an experience of something, right? And that's pretty much what came up with this one. Is I suppose quick backstory. When I was studying NLP, and one of the things they were talking about was the ability to change your state in a moment from one thing to another was quite powerful and profound, because before that point, the kind of general thinking was, in order to be happy, I need X, Y, and Z, for example, right? But discovering that state is already within you, and you can actually switch it on just like that. You don't need something to be happy, right? And that comes up in the sense of your being what you think you need, as opposed to looking for it externally, if that makes sense. So, you know, to be happy, you don't need things. You could just go to a happy state in your mind and just be happy, right? So it's the act of actually actualizing the thing on your mind as opposed to thinking you need something else in order to trigger it.
Actually actualizing the actual thing.
I like that. I'm going to make a note of that one.
That's a wisdom bomb for today, yeah? So yours is, so your insight is more around just being happy in the moment rather than looking for it in other things.
Yeah, I suppose as like the quickest thing that comes to the mind is you don't need something in order to be a certain way.
Okay, all right,
Yeah.
good. So you're on the right lines, yeah. So this koan actually is an interesting one, because we're called human beings, and once you kind of outgrow your child years, and you grow step into adulthood, and you have that rite of passage into adulthood. Whatever that means for different people is different, and however that appears for different people is different. Once you step into adulthood, and we could talk about that rite of passage as well if you want later. I might even make a note of that. As adults, what tends to happen is first of all, responsibilities. Okay, people tend to gain more responsibility, and that might be in various ways, shapes, or forms. It could be, you're married, so you've got responsibility of looking after, caring, and loving and supporting your partner. You might have children, so loving, caring, and supporting your children as well. You might have codependents, like elderly parents or elderly grandparents that you have to love, support, care, and look after, right? And so on. So you might have a job, right, that you need to serve in. You might have a business that you need to support and look after, nurture, grow, right, and support all the people and the employees that you've got, and make sure that they're taken care of, and so on. Point being, and with all of that comes financial responsibilities, paying utilities, paying sundries, consumables, and all that kind of stuff, right? So as you get older, and you assume a more position of responsibility, not just over yourself, not over the sovereign nation that is in you, but also people that you've got the duty of care towards, that responsibility grows. And as that responsibility grows, whether you're doing that through an obligation or whether you're doing that through necessity, the key thing is that you get busy. Okay, you get busy, and you end up, after a while, especially if you're not really aware of it and not thinking about it, you start to just get busy being busy, and before you realize it, you have become what I call a human doing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, right. A human being that is just doing loads of stuff just to support, survive, and honor those responsibilities and obligations that you've taken on. Okay, but there's that demarcation line, right, from when you're a child to when you become the adult. Okay, because below that demarcation line, below that rite of passage, okay, where you are still classified as a child, and this is a generic case because there's a lot of children that have got hardships in life. Okay, so they may also have responsibilities that have to grow up a lot quicker than their physical age dictates. Okay, in other words, their rite of passage into adulthood happens at a much younger age. Okay, so when I refer to being a child to being an adult, it's not not necessarily a number of years, because in some cases where a child might have lost a parent and has to support a sibling, for instance, especially a younger sibling, because they might be 6-year-old and they might have a 4-year-old sibling to look after, they might have already assumed that responsibility, for instance. Yeah. So their rite of passage into adulthood starts at 6 years old. And again, I'm just fabricating a scenario there, but that happens. Okay. And there's many, many, many different ways in which, someone that's supposed to be a child is no longer allowed to be a child because some life-changing situation has changed their circumstances, and they've had to grow up a lot quicker. Okay. So I'm actually referring to the other cases where, not necessarily the other cases. I'm actually referring to the years within which a person, no matter what age they are, has no responsibilities and can live like a child and be playful. Yeah. Be playful, have no responsibilities, and just enjoy life, be present in the moment, and just be free of everything. But you don't even know you're free of anything, because all you're doing is you're playing in the moment, and that's the only thing that exists. A child doesn't worry about what's going to come tomorrow. A child doesn't really necessarily worry about what's happened yesterday. It's just what's happening in that very moment in time. They're in the now. They're in that presence. And that presence allows them to play in such a present way that adults, as they become busier doing stuff, as they become busier honoring more obligations as things ensue, tend to forget, okay, how to do, right? And this is really about an awareness around that. Is an awareness around what it takes to be a child, and what it is like to be an adult. But what if we could take the essence of being a child, of being, because they know the essence of being in the moment, and allow us to, as adults, also relearn that lesson of being. And that's where the whole coinage of this koan, not human doing, human being, comes from. That makes sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's like most often, it just reminds me of a story. I was with a friend in a park, and we're just sitting there having a conversation, and this child comes along and starts like screaming and shouting in a playful way to the pigeons. And the little brother comes along and starts doing the same thing, just mimicking his older brother, right? And myself and my friend are looking at this, and we got distracted because it's just like the kids were just being present and playing in the moment, right? And it broke our state from our serious conversation to just be there in the moment as that was unfolding. And I think you were sharing about like kids, they often do that, where they actually break your patterns and bring you to the present moment. Yeah. And it's that curiosity, that childlike nature is what you're talking about, saying that as we get older, we sometimes lose that element of it and get so caught up in the game, we forget how to play the game.
Yeah.
Right. And like being like almost like a childlike state of curiosity allows us to think again and become present and not think as well at the same time. So yeah, so it's amazing how children can bring that out of someone.
And as parents, we can learn, and should I say, we can relearn how to be children again. And especially when you got young children, it's hard work. Okay, I don't think anyone's going to say, "Oh, it's easy to have a baby or a child," because you're concerned about when they're young, that they're fed on time, that they're in good health, that they're growing at the right rate and pace, and they're flourishing physically, because there's very little in terms of all the communication is at the level at which babies can communicate through their cries and screeches and certain movements that they have. Okay, they can't just speak plain English, can they? Or whatever language the baby may be in, area they might be born in. But so, and then as you grow up, right, you're they're better positioned to articulate that. So I forgot what I was going to say, to be honest.
It's just amazing how kids can just, can do that. It's like you were saying, it's almost like a state of unlearning, because we get caught up in habits. I should another example, another story. I remember going to like a comedy training once through some connections of friends. We had this comedian come over, and he was teaching us how to be funny and how to bring like humor into one's conversation. And I remember there was this lady there who I think, when you just announce who you are, what you do kind of thing. She was talking about, I think she was in law, right? She was a lawyer or solicitor or something, right? So in the morning when she had turned up, she was very like, solid, fixed, rigid in her approach. And as the day went along and we got into, talking, conversing, relaxing, by the end of the day, she was like a completely different person. Yeah. And I sat there looking at her and thinking, isn't that interesting? Isn't that so interesting that she's been doing her line of work for such a long period of time, that she's adopted this almost like state, that when she came in the morning, she was like, the lawyer type of kind of mindset and everything. And at the end of it, she was laughing around, joking, interacting a lot more. And just to see that shift in one's kind of patterned approach and conditioning versus just being.
Yeah.
It's phenomenal. It's phenomenal how we human beings end up doing that. And sometimes we just need to be able to let go.
Yeah.
And just let it unfold as it should.
and I remember the point I was trying to make as well about it was about hard work. When children, when you have young children, that it feels like hard work. The babies are babies. They're playful in to a certain degree, but beyond which, all you're trying to do is help them grow up. As they start to grow, start to crawl, start to walk, start to run around, start to verbalize and communicate with you, it starts to get fun. Even though it's hard work, because what you're trying to do is at the same time is protect them from not running out into the street or sticking their hands in the door while the door's closing, or falling down the stairs, or all these hazards that you have in daily life, which you don't even think about if you don't have any kids around. But the moment you've got kids around, it's like everything's a danger and you're on maximum alert, especially when they start becoming mobile. And it's really easy to forget to enjoy that moment. Because it's far too easy to focus on being tired, being in a state of continuous hypervigilance, and therefore that's draining in its own right, because you cannot switch off until the baby goes to sleep or the child goes to sleep. So how do you get into the moment? And it's a simple formula, but the simple things are very hard to do. All right, and the simple formula is this: just start to become present and play like the child, and that child becomes our teacher. The child starts to teach us how to relearn how to play, because they only know what's in that moment. And where you're probably thinking about, I need to do this, I need to do this, I need to do this, I need to get this ready for this and that ready for that, and I need to produce this, I got this thing coming up at work, and whatever it might be, and all these things, are bouncing around in your mind. And you've got to learn the art of saying, actually, you know what, all of this stuff, just slide over for a moment. And I'm going to play with my child. I'm going to play with my son, my daughter, my niece, my nephew, my grandson, my granddaughter, whoever it is, and it might be your baby brother, baby sister, whoever, right? But it's just getting into that mindset. Now I'm going to put my hands up. And I want to say I'm guilty, right? Because I was one of those warriors. I was thinking about what I needed to do, right? To whether it was work or whether it was personal ethical enterprises that I was working on at any given moment in time, there was always something. It was always something because I felt this need to do something. And my wife, bless her, she used to always say, can you do me a big favor and play with the children up until they go to sleep, and then you can work on whatever you want to work on. And then what I started doing was learning the art of diarizing my day, my weekday, so that if I wanted to work on a personal business enterprise, I would work on it after 7 o'clock or even 7:30 onwards, right? But in between the time I get back from work and the kids go to sleep, I would spend time with them. Okay. And at the same time, I again put my hands up and say, yeah, I'm guilty. I wasn't always present because it's very hard to do. Mm-hmm. Very hard to do. Right. And I don't think I really fully understood how to be present until a lot later on. Right. But they've by that time they grow up. Okay. So lessons that can be learned from other people that made those mistakes, right? Such as yours truly, so that you don't have to, and you can actually enjoy being present in that moment. My mother, for instance, she's got this amazing knack when she plays with the kids. She's just there 100%. But then the rest of the time, her mind's elsewhere. So she's not even, playing. She just gets on with her thing, So she's either there or she's not there. And when she is there, she's completely there, right? And it was amazing because she used to always play with us when we were little. Even now with the grandchildren, if she wants to play with them, believe it or not, she's up on the trampoline in the back garden with her grandchildren. And that's it, she's just like one of them. Just 60 years older than them.
Yeah.
Right, or something thereabouts. But my point being that when I see her, my mom reminds me how actually when she played with us, she was playing with us. There was nothing else. But then when she was working, that was it. She was in the zone, and we knew that she was in the zone. So there were times where if she wanted us to engage with her, then she would give us some chores or some errands to do where we could help her throughout that. So some of it was fun and some of it was boring, right? I'll be honest, right? But
it's funny though, Lex, because when you're sharing that, what's also coming up is how we're unconditionally conditioning things as well, and it's that fine balance of, we don't mean to be a certain way, but we're doing it because we know that it's also going to protect the child or the person, whoever you're having a conversation with. It's like a two-way dynamic going on. And sometimes we could get so caught up in that dynamic that, like you say, we don't become present to it, but becoming present to it allows us to see that dynamic as well.
Yeah.
And that's just a fascinating, it's so fascinating, right? That a lot of this stuff comes from childhood.
And just to add to that as well, I mean, one of the other things that comes out is when you've got a child in your presence and they're playing up, right? They're playing up. Let's say you've got a family gathering, right? You've got children present, you've got adults present, and the adults are, all of a sudden got carried away talking to one another. And now they're no longer paying attention to the kids. And one of the kids starts playing up, right? He might hurt one of the other kids or might just start to act out of sorts. They're not being naughty. They don't know how to say, can you spend time with me? Can you play with me? And just to say those words is a massive deal. But they don't know how to say that because they can't articulate those words that way, right? So even as adults, a lot of adults can't really
articulate
what they as well, right?
Yeah.
So you imagine that kids, it's even harder to do. I mean, some kids are wiser than their years, right? So they're able to do it, but majority of them are no. And as a consequence, the behavior really is their communication. So when you see that, it's a cry for help, more a cry for, will you play with me? Will you spend some time with me? Right. And they just want your full attention. And they know if you're kind of like parallel processing or multitasking, because that's a violation of their code, because their code is you play with me 100%. Right. You have to be right now being, not doing this, that, and the other.
Yeah. And they know it as well. And this is the fascinating thing about it. Kids just know that. They know if you're not present.
Yeah.
They don't know what to call it, but they know.
Yeah.
And it's just amazing. I mean, it's just that in itself is so insightful that, you know, we're conditioned over time, you know, and a lot of what we do now is probably linked to things in our younger years, things that we haven't necessarily broken out of or evolved of, or just thought that's the way it is, you know. At some point when we become present, it's almost like the present moment allows us to recondition, almost like recode the brain. Yeah. Because it's like, you know, the analogy I always use is that, you know, you got a computer, and the simple thing with the computer is you got input, process, and output. Yeah. But with humans, there's an extra element to it. You got input, you got a process, you got output, you got to assess, and you got a calibration. Because you can actually assess your outcome and say, okay, did this work? If it didn't, what can I do different the next time around? Right. And that almost creates like a learning loop to say, okay, this is how you get better at something over time. Yeah. But it requires us to become present to actually become aware of that. So it's such a powerful thing to know about being present. Is almost like the secret of life.
and that process that you just described there, when humans try and get computers to do that, that's what they call artificial intelligence, right? Because intelligence is intrinsic, it's always there, but you have to cultivate it. Yeah. Right? With computers, more so, because computers are dumb. But anyone says that computers are clever, they're not. I'm a computer science software engineer. You're an IT guy, and so computers are our tools, and we know that computers do what you tell them to do. And if you've got AI engines, then there's algorithms that are created by humans to help the computer learn, and they learn by collating data and assessing, and then calibrating based on the data that's accumulated. It's a simple thing.
And the funny thing about coding. And this is something that came across some time ago when they were talking about how, excuse me, you have the coder might have a biased way of doing things. So if they've coded a machine with their biased thinking, does that make the machine biased as well? Right? Yeah. Which is like, that's like a next level of artificial intelligence we go into, because you go,
but there's always
ethics and morals and stuff, right?
But there's always bias. I mean, you think about, as a software engineer, right? Certain coders, developers, they code in a certain way, a certain style, right? So there's already a bias there in the way they write code down. Some developers write code elegantly. Some coders write code lazily, therefore more lines to do the same thing. Right. And then there's, and also it could be more lines to do the same thing, but it doesn't work, which is even worse. Right.
And that's the parallel there with like humans, is that it comes to like this thing we call about bad knowledge. Like, you know, if there's certain things you do and there's an efficient way to do it, but you've taught someone an inefficient way to do it, even though it might still get done, there's too many lines of code. There's too many like inefficiencies in that process. And that happens in life. It happens in coaching. It happens in business. So, you know, somebody's done something and they thought, okay, this is the way to do it. So they pass that knowledge on to someone else, but they don't really realize that actually, is this the most efficient way? Is this just bad coding or least efficient coding we're passing on? So there's a nice parallel there between teaching other people in how to do things as well, because there's a long way and a short way of doing it. And it's like, you know, what are we, do we even know?
Well, your analogy is perfect, because, you know, the brain is a computer, right? The mind is your
neck-top computer.
This is your neck-top computer. Your brain's your computer, but the storage the storage and the intelligence is what I would call, you've heard of cloud-based computing, right? I call it ether-based computing, yeah? Right? Which is one step above cloud-based, right? Because just clouds are only up there, right? But the ether is like omnipresent, yeah. Or the Akash, as they call it in Sanskrit. So you could call it Akashic computing. Akashic computing would basically imply that all intelligence and all memory is stored outside of you, which is right. There's nothing. And no neuroscientist or neurologist has proven that anything's stored inside your brain, right? Mm-hmm. It's only a gateway. So what you've got is essentially you're working a computer. Now, you mentioned this right now. It's like, in order to reprogram this computer, just like, you've got your mobile phone, you get your updates on your mobile phone to say, hey, there's a new release, upgrade now, or notify you later. Later time, yeah. So chances are at some point you're gonna have to upgrade it. So you kick off the upgrade and it does its thing, and that's it. You keep upgrading your phone as the updates come out. But when was the last time you upgraded your neck-top computer? Yeah, right. When was the last time you did that? So in order to do that, if you take your mobile phone, for instance, and you say, you know what, I'll update this later, right? That's fine. Update it later. Say tomorrow comes, you say, oh, you know what, I'll update it later. The next day comes, oh, I'll update it later. The day after that comes, you haven't done anything, right? This is still, some apps stop working, yeah? Okay, there's malfunctions now in some of the applications. The phone's not really working optimally. Maybe the battery's dying quicker than it should do, or whatever it might be. In order to actually upgrade this, you've got to say install now. It doesn't say install yesterday or install. It does give you the option of installing later, but if you want to actually do the update, you have to say install now. Okay, you have to be present. Even the bloody phone has to be present. Yeah. Right. Right. And that's what you have to do here. You have to make a decision right now. Are you going to change something? Right. And if you're going to change something, then you need to do it right now. You can say, you've got every right to say, you know what, I'll update later. Yeah. Yeah. I'll update later. Nothing's going to change. Right. And things will, your battery might start going down quicker, right? Things might stop working, as you go along, right?
Become inefficient.
Right. You become inefficient, right? You get the idea, right? There is no difference. There is no difference. All technology is modeled on human knowledge and behavior. Everything, right? There isn't anything that isn't modeled in computing technology on humans, right? In fact, it's funny because technology is a reflection of us, right? Exactly. You're on your mobile phone, you got a phone, yeah? Right? Or a smartphone, you've got a phone, a communication device. It gives us a superpower ability to communicate with someone that's not in front of you. Like we're doing this podcast and you're sitting 35 miles away, right? For instance, yeah, and our viewers might be sitting thousands of miles away, and they can reach and access this communication even when we're not doing a live recording and actually talking, right? So after the event, but they can still receive this message. How amazing is that, right? So what we've done is we've taken essentially a snapshot in a moment in time that anyone can replay at any moment in the future, right? Which was done in the past.
Which will be, I listen to it later.
Yeah, which translates, I'll listen to it later. Or I listen to it now, yeah? Right? So all of a sudden, right, what's happening is we're replicating and mirroring the intelligence of the universe in its own right, through use of technology, right? And that's just one simple example. But that decision has to be made now if you want to upgrade, reframe, reprogram your neck-top computer so that you've got a more resourceful outcome. Okay, you can also do it to have a more unresourceful outcome if you're feeling in a self-sabotaging mood. But that's the whole point, is not to do that. It's to say, no, actually, you know what? I want to be my higher self. Therefore, I need to get rid of unresourceful behavior and replace that with resourceful behavior. That's what you should be looking towards doing. And that decision has to be made right now. And on top of that, when you're making that decision, you have to have a clarity on what the outcome is going to look like, feel like, smell like, taste like, sound like. Okay. And also, what is your inner voice going to be saying, right, as a consequence of that? So you know what that whole sense gratification experience is going to be once you go through that upgrade, and then take it from there. Otherwise, you're not going to know. And that is key to making sure that you do upgrade your neck-top computer. You do upgrade your programming in your mind, and only then can you do that. Now, if you don't know how to do the actual programming, it's simple. Go find help from someone that is qualified and experienced to do that. You can go to all sorts of, this podcast itself is reprogramming your neck-top computer, right? The teachings and the wisdom that we're sharing is there.
Find a human hacker.
we're mind hacking, essentially, right?
Mind hacking, yeah.
We're both hypnotherapists, so hypnotherapy is a great way to reframe, reprogram the mind. There's loads of modalities, so many modalities that, as a martial arts instructor, I use movement to reprogram the mind. Okay, so there's so many different ways. All you need to do is just find a method that works for you. But ultimately is about changing behaviors so that you can get into that state of being rather than always just doing stuff. Yeah. Because most of what we do is bullshit. Let's face it. Yeah. Most of the things that we do is bullshit. And now, if one thing that I learned from the pandemic is actually the only really thing that you need to do is eat, drink, excrete, right? The waste products, and sleep. Right? They're the essentials. Yeah. There's nothing else. If you boil down to anything, that's what you need. Therefore, what do you need? You need a roof over your head. You need food and water. Right? That's it. Right? I mean, I'm assuming that everyone's got some clothes. Yeah. But if you're growing at a rate where your clothes are getting short for you, you need clothes as well. Right? So essentials. That is it. There is nothing else. Everything else is extraneous. Netflix is extraneous. Yeah, nothing wrong. I got nothing bad about Netflix, right? But I'm just saying,
unless you're watching Cobra Kai, which is allowed.
Oh yeah, 100%. or any Bruce Lee movies.
Oh yeah, that's it.
So, so bare essentials, right? So hopefully, kind of, you get the idea that being present is actually quite simple. But to get to simplicity, you need to hack away. As Bruce said, you need to hack away the inessential, right? Get rid of all the complexity. And my favorite Bruce Lee quote is simply to simplify, is hacking away the unessential, essentially, right? Just getting rid of anything extra, okay? So that you're, back down to the core. And one of the Bruce's quote when he talked about, hack away the unessential was essentially, imagine you've got a big block of clay, okay, massive block of clay, and and you are the sculptor. So what you're doing is you're chiseling this clay, and as you're chiseling away, what you're eventually going to do is reveal this beautiful sculpture inside it. Okay. And let's just say that sculpture is you in your greatest beauty and power and grace. Okay. That's what you're trying to reveal. Right. And when you're going through this process of personal development, when you're going through this process of self-mastery, when you're going through this process of self-realization, that's what you're doing. You're trying to reveal who you are. within that block of clay. And it's a slow process, because there is no sculptor that managed to, take a magic hammer and all the excess clay just drop away, and then there you go. I'm not talking about molds. I'm talking about sculpting. Okay, right? For you smart asses out there, say, hey, you can make a mold. Even if you're going to make a mold, you have to take yourself first, right? Okay, in your truest perfection. And if right now you're not in your your true authentic high self, as in your most powerful, beautified, graceful self, then why would you take a mold of something that isn't the target? Yeah, right. So it's a work in progress. That's really the takeaway from that. So be mindful of that as you go along this journey, because it's one that doesn't necessarily also just end at a certain point. It's an ongoing process beyond this lifetime, right? So just keep going, just keep doing the best you can. But most importantly of all, avoid the trap of just doing stuff all the time, and start getting into the habit of being. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So yeah, what do you think, JT?
That's been amazing. I mean, there's so much wisdom bombs that we've dropped in there, and if you were really listening, you would hear the secrets in there, because presence is the key. That being present, getting into the moment, is where everything is. Everything else is just a memory or a future projection, right? The only thing real is right here, right now.
Yeah.
The present moment. So that's been fantastic, Lax. I think, man, it's just a lot to ponder, a lot to process, but it's, well worth it.
What was it? Is Buddha said, if you're thinking about the past, I can't remember the exact words, but if you're thinking about the past, you're just recalling past memories. If you're thinking about the future, you're nervous. If you're thinking about the past, you're recalling sadness. If you're thinking about the future, you're just creating anxiety and nervousness. It's just about being here in the now. I can't remember the exact quote word for word, but it's worth as for the viewers and the listeners to go away and look that up. It's a beautiful, short, sweet quote that kind of really puts it into context nicely. Okay, so a little bit of homework for the listeners there. There's so much knowledge and wisdom that's bouncing around in our minds, that sometimes, just recalling their precise words is not always available on the tip of the tongue. So therefore, I do encourage everyone to go away and do a little bit of due diligence, and also due diligence and taking some actions away from listening to a podcast, which is about cultivating self-mastery and self-realization, shows that actually you are ready to make an active effort. Listening is passive. Doing is active. Being is a state of accomplishment. Okay. All right. So I'm going to leave that with you, with all the viewers and listeners. I think this is a good point to actually read the koan for what it is. So here goes. Not human doing, human being. As we get older, with the growing responsibilities of family and work, it is easy to get caught up in the business of busyness. Putting food on the table, a roof over your head, clothes on your back, and a little something to enjoy the finer things in life. And before we realize we are busy doing. Take a step back for a moment and remember yourself as a child. For a child with a loving and caring upbringing does not worry about what is going to happen in the future, does not grieve what happened in the past, simply lives in the present moment and enjoys each moment playing. We can rediscover our original freedom by reconnecting to our inner child. We can relearn how to play and simply be rather than do all the time. For when the inner child dies, you are simply waiting to die.
Wow.
There you go.
Wow. That's amazing. Sifu Lak, I think there's some deep knowledge to be found in that one. And again, people, as always, that was from The Art of Thinking Without Thinking, which is available from Amazon or martianwhitepower.com. And it's a fantastic book. I mean, look at it. You could literally pick any moment in time. You could just pick a page and read it, and you'll get something from it. And even moments of inspiration, moments of motivation, they're literally available to you in a book, right?
The contents page as well also has everything. The book split into several sections by what you're experiencing and what you might need guidance on. Okay, so if I could give you an example here for our viewers, we've got opening koans to start with, but there's a section for anger and fear. There's a section for karma, and again, I'm just going to pick some key ones which you might relate to straight away. There's one about gratitude. There's a section for living consciously. There's section about how to walk your path. There's a section for negativity, positivity, and happiness. There's a section for stress, peace, and harmony. There's a section for letting go and getting into the flow. And it goes on and on and on and on. There's so many sections here that there's 750 pages worth, okay? And there's 1 to 2 pages per koan, okay? So just gives you an idea, right, on the amount of wisdom that we've managed to put together in there for you. But, just as a closing comment. I know earlier on I mentioned the rite of passage into adulthood. There are people that have experienced trauma as part of that rite of passage. Okay, and some of that trauma has happened very early on in their what would be classified as childhood years, where they've been denied their childhood and that playfulness. Okay, if you've experienced anything like that, then it's even more important that you work on sharpening your own sword. Okay, you work on cultivating your self-mastery and self-realization, because all of those lessons are there for you to ascend something in life through our what we call our cosmic choices. Okay, and a dharmic path that we choose in this lifetime. We've got a whole koan that we spoke about this on, where we spoke about karma and dharma and so on. So please refer to that podcast and have a look at the other podcasts in our library that is growing all the time for more information. But most importantly of all is taking responsibility for the moment you're in right now, and owning that, okay? And then using that moment when you step into the now right now to reshape what the future is going to look like, okay? But that reshaping happens now, not in the future. How it changes over time is how the now is changing every single step of the way, okay? All right, so my heart goes out to all the people that have had traumatic and hard life experiences, but that's why we're here, okay, to help hold your hand and to guide you along in this process, and to say, hey, we got you, right? We got you, we understand, right? And at the same time, we're here to share some tools, share some wisdom, share some ideas, share some knowledge, share the knowledge that we've got in the books to help you along that journey. And also where we can, we also refer you to people and organizations where you can continue that journey, but also at the same time to encourage you to take ownership and responsibility, because all help is self-help. Nobody is transformed themselves if they're not willing to. Okay, so in order to change that, you need to say right now, this moment in time, that I do not want to be like this anymore. I want to be like that. And if I want to be like that, I got to change that now. In order to change it now, this is what I'm going to do. Okay. And if you don't know straight away, the decision to find out what that process is going to look like, you make a decision right now that you're going to start going on that path. That's where it starts. This is why I always say change starts with yourself, right?
Absolutely.
So rite of passage, right? It sounds really cool, but in reality, people that have gone through a rite of passage, a real rite of passage, know that actually is full of suffering and pain, and that has helped condition them. Okay, but if they haven't seen the gold that they've been gifted, you will do. No matter how traumatic, there always is. All right. And my wife always, she always says, how do you manage to find the silver lining when you're going through something that's tough or traumatic or challenging? And I just say it's my intrinsic nature, and that's how I can lead that way. So I hope this is received with love, because that's all it's about. All what it's about. It's not about anything else. It's not about, oh, you don't understand what I'm going through. Trust me, I've been through my fair share of shit. Okay, and that's why I can serve through experience and understanding, and also being in a higher state of consciousness. Otherwise, we won't be doing this, and doing it with so much conviction. And that conviction comes through knowing, not a belief. This isn't theoretical, by the way. So I want those viewers and those listeners to know that if you are have gone through something like that, it's okay. Okay, it's okay. Right. So being in the now is even more important for you guys. All right.
Thank you very much, Sifu Lak. And you know what? Feel free to reach out. Go to any of the websites, go to the contact form. If you want to have a conversation, just put a message through. And on that note, Sifu, thank you very much. And we will chat again and share some more wisdom bombs next time. So until then, thank you very much, everyone. Take care.